I really like her. I like, her take on Japan. But I want to piggyback on the job she did on this, and the way the documentary was presented to me. I'm not bashing it at all. If you're watching this, I'm not bashing it. You did a great job. But I was intrigued. I watched the whole fucking thing. It's like a 4-part thing. I'm gonna go through the whole 4 parts. It's not, it's gonna be probably several episodes that go through this and get my take on all these episodes. But the thing that was striking to me, how do I phrase this, was that the visuals and the topics and the information is really solid, but the visuals of it, someone who's never been to Japan, it could, she was making several valid points, but taking, I think, some more concepts or scenes or people that are situations that are more appealing to Western people, I think, visually or topic wise appealing to Western people, but could lead to people having a misconception about Japan. What she was saying, the meat of what she was saying was very real, very correct, very thought-provoking for me. But me watching it, even I watched it with my mother-in-law, and we were watching it together. It was all in English, but some people were speaking in Japanese, but we kind of, some parts, looking at each other like, and I was explaining to her like, yeah, I like this, but somebody who, for me, I live in Japan, I know what Japan is. Someone who has never been to Japan, them watching this, they can get a very, very, very inaccurate view of what life in Japan is like. It's entertaining, but it could kind of skew someone's image of Japan, and that's kind of my one. I don't want to say gripe about it, but my one critique of it. The first episode, just so that I'm on topic. So the first episode is why Japan's gender gap is so wide, right? Really good episode. A lot of interesting people in it. It opens up with a punk rock girl group performing, and it kind of goes into some girl power shit, right? Like, I don't mean that in a demeaning kind of way or a condescending way at all, but what I'd encourage you to do is really listen. The part that really resonated with me is when she asked the girls in the group, like, by the way, before I start this, don't listen to this. If you haven't watched this documentary, stop the podcast right now. Watch episode 1 of the documentary, then come back and listen to this, right? It would make a lot more sense if you do it that way. Okay, so just stop this shit right now. Stop it. Okay, I'm assuming that you've already watched that episode 1 of Deciphering Japan. So now I'm gonna go back in and go in. I'm going in. Okay. All right. So yeah, if the punk rock group. Excuse me, sorry about the burping. If you really listen to what she said, about their lyrics and things like that, yeah, they want to deconstruct the system and all this shit, but like, their audience are mostly dudes, and they kind of don't really get what they're saying. It's just something that sounds cool, and in some ways, like, Japanese people are kind of superficial, like shit like that. It's like, yeah, that's right, yeah, that's cool, but as long as it doesn't affect my life, so yeah, whatever. Like, and for better or for worse, most people kind of, I guess most people in the world, but especially I feel like in Japan, more often than not, like, don't really go deep into a cause or go deep into a topic, that doesn't really impact their everyday life. They don't really give, for lack of a word, don't really give 2 fucks, when it comes down to it. It's more indifference. You might, psychologically, something might make sense, something might feel good, but it doesn't move people to action. It doesn't move people to act outside themselves. And those girls in that punk rock group, they probably have everyday jobs. Like, they're not like they're performing in a live house somewhere. Like they're not like, for lack of a better word, probably not famous. They probably have a following, but I would be surprised if they are that group is their full-time job and they don't live with their parents and they live on their own. I would be surprised. Like, I applaud them, but I just don't really see that happening. Yeah, I would say, just wild assumptions on my part. They definitely have 9 to 5s, or they live with their parents. That's what it is. So it's kind of, a little bit in the West I'd say it's a bit different. Like, if you're gonna live the punk rock lifestyle, you're gonna say girl power. You might fucking have an alternative way of life, and that subculture might be able to feed your motivation to fight the system. But in Japan, not so much. You know what I'm saying? It's nice to say, it's nice to feel that way, but I question not only the girls but also their fans, kind of how much that punk rockness really is them. And I'm not saying it to, I'm not, trust me, it sounds like I'm really being condescending. I'm not. But I just want to drive home the fact that, what is counterculture in Japan, and what's seen as like really counterculture and a thriving subculture in Japan, is kind of icing on the cake. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like people really going left, in everyday life. And in the documentary, it shows really what they're saying is 100% correct, but people kind of feel that way, on top of their conventional lives, is what I'm trying to say. So just kind of keep, again, my one man's perspective, but keep that in mind as you watch, when you watch that. The next part is the matchmaking one. This is an interesting one. This is a really interesting one. I got a lot to say about this. More beer means more shit to talk about. Okay. So this thing, like, on the surface, it might really seem kind of like backwards, and even how, the hostess, I should say, how she, dealt with the class and things like that. Me surveying that class and the teacher of the teacher and the students, what it looked like to me, this is just my experience. It looked like to me was the students in that class, they want to marry someone well off. That's what it is. They don't want to find a partner. They're learning these skills to find someone who's well off, who makes maybe 10 million, 75 million yen, 7 million, 10 million, which would be like $75,000 to $100,000 a year. A quote unquote good husband with a good job is kind of what they're looking for. They're really conservative women, who are working women. They're modern but have conservative values and kind of want to get married, want to have a kid, want to have a mortgage. And this is one of the techniques that they think will help them get a good guy. That's what they're not really trying to learn because they think that they need it, or they want to learn those skills as much as, okay, this is a skill that will give me a leg up in attracting the type of guys that I want to get, not for love, but for security. And you've kind of heard me talk, if you've listened to the podcast long term, I'm not being condescending, because Japan is very fucked up as far as gender inequality, and that kind of is the card that these women have to play, especially right now, to grasp that fruit, that's kind of what they are going after. Now, on the other side, being a foreign person, more than likely you're a native English speaker, these are the type of women that will have zero interest in you. A few of them were in their 30s, clearly. They're early to all the way, I think I saw one or two that were in their mid to late 30s. So they're trying to hit the home ball out of the park. And more often than not, like, if you're coming to Japan, figuring out your life, experiencing life, and they ain't got time for that shit. for me, when I was single, these are the type of women I just didn't even talk to. Very conservative, very dry, very, very much a mirror of the guy, mirroring what they think the guy likes. And from what I've heard from Japanese people, that's kind of the tactic that kind of works here for some women, and being that kind of Nadeshiko, kind of traditional Japanese style women, or even if not feeling that way, being able to exude some of the qualities of that type of person is a skill that they think will give them a leg up. That's an interesting thing about Japan. Like, people who exude qualities of something don't necessarily hold those dear to them. So even though those women are taking that type of course, they might be thinking like, man, fuck this shit, but I'm gonna do it because if I act this way, people will assume that I have these qualities, which means like, you'll give me a leg up. Like, you've heard me talk about manners, the concept of someone having good manners in Japan, or I forgot, not manners, like, I think being like a good person means having good manners here. It's more of how you, outward appearance, outward actions really, really, really dictates a lot here. So, my bad for all the breaks in this episode. My bad. Whew, okay. I was holding that in. Whew, okay. All right. So yeah. So it might, for people with Western values, that shit might seem fucked up, but it really is a strategy to it. But as far as the teacher, she's coming from a different time where, economically speaking, the salary man, the husband, it was just a single income. It was like Western life. It was just a single income was all that you really needed to get by. But now times have changed. And so, she's, kind of preaching to a completely different audience, but she's the sensei and she has the skills that they need. So that's what you get in that situation. It was very interesting for me to watch that dynamic, because for me, it's clear as day that that's kind of what's going on. That's how I see it, at least. All right. So next one was, then they had, a few working women who were more interested, who weren't really interested in getting married. Now for me, the women who took the class were the exception, and the women who were working and hanging out, those were more the norm. Not necessarily because they weren't interested in getting married, but just their personality, their demeanor in general would be more of the everyday type of like normal ass, like working business women that you would meet in Japan, whether they're interested in dating you or not. Like, that's more closer to the norm. They're just more regular chicks. Like, I'm sorry if the word chicks offends you. I'm sorry. But, that's kind of what it is. So this is kind of one of the things for me with the documentary series, like, watching that example of the class might give you oh my god, what's going on in Japan, everyone's taking, and you might run off with the idea that all the Japanese women are taking these fucking like housewife classes, but that's the exception. Generally speaking, the women who were interviewed later is kind of what you would see normally. But another thing, they went to to release stress, they went to a cafe where they can break stuff, and I'm familiar with that establishment. I've seen it advertised before. That's such a niche kind of place. Nobody goes there, right? Like, I don't know anybody who went there, and that's not something Japanese people do on a normal basis. But again, I think that was put in there for entertainment value to drive the point of that. But I would be shocked if going to that place was the girl's idea. I'm pretty sure it was for the document series. Not knocking the series, I'm just saying, like, that's not something Japanese people do on a normal basis, but it's kind of shocking, and it gives the impression like, oh yeah, they're frustrated with society, so they have no choice but to pay to go to these like weird fucking cafes and break shit all the time. Like, this is what people in Tokyo are doing all over the place, and that's not the truth, right? So I just want to clear it up so that you're not don't get any misconception of what you're stepping into if and when you do come to Japan, okay? Especially the Tokyo area. Cooking school in Ikumen, right? The next part was about the story of the teacher was really caught me off guard. That was a really touching story as well. Again, I would say that's not the norm as well too. Generally speaking, you know, even in working families, like the stay-at-home dad, even after that, that's not really what you're gonna get on a regular basis, you know, especially in a Japanese family. I'm not really gonna touch the cooking school thing. I think that's just an interesting story, but that's again not gonna be the norm here. What I would say is the stay-at-home dad, like, I would love, like, again, I love just people watching in Japan. I would love to just live in their like condominium complex for like a couple of months. And I'd love to see him dropping off the kids. And I'd love to see how their neighbors react to all that shit. You know, I mean, they probably had to do a lot of explaining, I'm not gonna lie. Like, just because naturally the wife is not the one dropping the kids. The kids look like they're elementary school kids, so she's not the one dropping them off every day. And she's not the one, like, picking them up every day. And she's not the one going to, you know. So, naturally the other moms are gonna be, like, looking around, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, you're supposed to be at the office. Why the fuck are you here? You know? But he's doing a startup. You know, so I think that gives them quite a bit of cover in Japanese society, right? For them to be like, yeah, I'm working. But I'm sure that's something they had to explain quite a bit to people. You know, like, oh, my husband, yeah, he works. He's doing a startup. Not like, oh, he didn't like his job and he decided to quit and do something else. Nah. I would definitely imagine, you know, that was something they had to get over, not amongst themselves, but just amongst other people, just because the perception is that he's the dad and he should be at the office and she should be in the house. Now with the COVID situation is a little bit different, but I'm just telling you, I can imagine like that shit was something that they had to deal with in the initial stages of him deciding to work from home, right? And so, next up, the tattoo lady. The main thing I can say about the tattoo lady, she's Western people like would see her and be like, oh, she's so cool, I want to meet her. I don't know, maybe you might think like that. My first reaction seeing her, like, oh, she is so down with Yakuza. God damn. Like those type of tattoos, that like she is 100% like, you know, knee deep in the game. You know, she is definitely Yakuza affiliated, 125%. You can't do that without being Yakuza affiliated. It might even be a Yakuza member. I don't know. But I'm not knocking you, lady. Just putting that out there. I'm not knocking you at all, okay? But I'm just telling you, like, in the West, we might think, oh, it's so cool, she's a tattoo artist, and in respect to her for really taking a passion to what she wants. But entering that world and being tattooed up the way she is, 125%, she had to know she was going knee deep into the Yakuza underworld, and she definitely is, like, in some form or another, which means Japanese people are so scared of her. Like, they, you know, oh my gosh, I guess I can't even explain how much she'll freak people out going into the supermarket. And again, Japan's a wall of pillows, right? She seems like she's like, you know, a really tough cookie in that way, where she kind of had that conviction where she knew, like, she's stepping into that world and she's completely ostracized by a large segment of society. When they see her walking down the street, it's not like, whoa, your tattoos are so cool. It's like, oh shit, she's fucking dangerous. Let's cross the street. Don't look at her everywhere she goes for the rest of her life. That's just the way it's gonna be, right? So again, like, that really was not something brought up in the docuseries at all. You know, it was just like, yeah, tattoos, but her clients are Yakuza. She's affiliated with Yakuza. To learn from a traditional tattoo artist, they serve Yakuza. She's involved with Yakuza in some way, somehow, probably very, very much involved in some type of society, some way, somehow. That's just what it is. That's something that really got skipped, and especially because from a Western perspective, how we view tattoos. No. That level, that's some different shit, okay? That's what I want you to understand about that. The last one was a bit tough for me. You've heard me kind of talk about violence against women. I had to turn this all. It got really heavy for me. I was just like, fuck, that's kind of like rough. So the last part, just about rape and sexual assault against women and things like that. That's the one disturbing thing about Japanese culture that does get kind of swept under the rug a bit. Some of the images you might not have picked up on were, if you notice the press conference, a guy in a suit with glasses, he was a reporter who I think a year or two ago got investigated. I don't know if he got arrested or I think he got charged or sued something for sexually assaulting one of his staff members. I kind of alluded to it in the previous episode. Like, Japan kind of sucks about that type of shit, and it's just something I really don't like about Japanese society, that there's just like a heavy burden of proof against the victim. It's really skewed towards the man. Only like a few occasions where it's just like blatantly obvious that the person did something so fucked up. They kind of go after people. So that's something I hope, I believe will change eventually about Japan. But those type of protests, I don't know how effective they are in Japanese society, because again, the general person likes to look away from those kind of like blatant displays of feeling, emotion, or things like that in Japanese society. It's like, yeah, we understand you, but in those protests, I didn't hear about it but until this documentary, and to openly protest in Japan is something. It's kind of like looking at the sun. People kind of like, okay, I don't really want to look at that. It's nice, but I don't. This situation's not nice, but like, okay, it's bright, but I don't really want to look directly at it. They prefer not to look directly at it. It's kind of how I see Japanese people seeing protests. So it happens, it's there, okay, but we're not going to look at it. And once it goes away, we're kind of like relieved that it's not this heavy kind of thing beaming down on me because I'm trying to live my everyday life. It's kind of how I see Japanese people reacting to those type of protests. I never really see or hear or feel Japanese society being like, fuck yeah, to some shit that's like protested openly. It's kind of like a slow moving ship where the atmosphere of the country kind of moves in one direction or moves in another direction. And, I guess it feels like my speculation is people don't like feeling pulled by loud people. Again, the nail that sticks out is hammered down. So it feels like you're kind of like, hey, look at me kind of situation. It would be my take on it. So, again, like, I had to turn it off after a while because it was just kind of heavy for me, after like 5 minutes hearing the stories. And, again, I'm trying to be like a positive kind of person, not turn my back on it, not saying like it's not worthy, but, it was just kind of like, ooh, so that's episode 1 of Deciphering Japan, my take on it.